What is up, guys? Clay Enjoyer here, and it's time to enjoy. And in this video, I made a big green space steroid abuser. I mean, an orc, my bad. So I can start building up this orc like all orcs normally are, with layers of clay built up incredibly heavily because I can't do proportions and orcs are weird. A while ago on my Space Marine build, someone commented should I make an Orc or a Plague Marine. I decided to make an Orc because I thought it would be a little bit more different than a Space Marine. And now I would also like to get better at making people's comments so I can get more engagement. Which engagement equals cool, I guess. Because I don't get too many views, but I want to change that. Starting by making this massive 4-gunned gun, I guess. I'm not entirely sure what this is, but sooner or later, if you're a Warhammer nerd like me, I think you'll catch on which orc this is. With the body of the quadruple turret made, I can start carving in the bullets because these massive guns need something to actually shoot. And I don't know about you guys, but I think orcs are basically the equivalent of big gun go brrr. I don't know. I think it would be definitely cool to have a gun like this orc does. So I can carve out the rest of the bullets to make them a little bit more smooth and a little bit less rough because they're technically supposed to be like rounded. Then I can put some extra banding of clay around the gun to give it some extra detail and make it look like it's supposed to. It will definitely become a theme throughout this video that this sculpture is primarily panels and panels and panels of clay, some blended into each other and some are not, like this one that is blended in. To give the giant turret thing a little bit extra detail, I can carve a bunch of lines into the front on these donut ring things. I'm not sure why I decided to do these, but I guess it would be good for like dry brushing some paint over top of, I don't know. But I think it looks cool anyway and makes the video longer. Another detail that is going to be repeated a bunch throughout the entire build is rivets with this little circle tool. Now I can finally attach it to the arm, even though it's way too big than I originally intended, but as orcs say, big guns go brrr! Even though the gun looks good and it is not at all steady, this is a problem that I'm going to be facing throughout the entire video, in and off camera, because I didn't have enough armature wire for the gun to be supported, so it kept falling over. That's why the various objects are under it, so I can try and best angle it so that it's level. Followed by a bunch more rivets and a elbow gear joint. With the long-ranged gun completed for now, I can start working on the melee weapon, which for this orc is going to be a big claw, but I won't spoil too much more of it because I want it to be interesting. But in Warhammer 40k, most people use one melee and one long-ranged. Except if you're a blue Smurf Tau communist who is too scared to fight hand-to-hand combat properly, in which then you would have only ranged weapons. To help this mighty power claw take shape, I can add a thumb so it looks like it's a thumb and 3 giant blade fingers with 3 mini spikes for some reason, because when I looked at the references, that's what they had. And to make it look a bit more orky and just haphazardly put together, I can add some panels and blend them in haphazardly, followed by, you guessed it, a bunch of rivets to make the surface look a little bit less flat. With the claw finished, I can attach it to the arm and start working on the rest of the arm, kind of like the gun with the gear riveted shape thing, because I want it to be at least a little bit symmetrical. Even though technically orc technology would be anything but symmetrical, with both of the weapons done, I can make a gear for the melee hand off camera and then cover them in clay to make a bit of a armored exoskeleton armor thing. I didn't really know what I was doing when I started this sentence, but what I do know is that to make orc armor, it involves a bunch of panels randomly placed with a bunch of rivets and wires to match on either side. To make the orc's armor look relatively ramshackly put together, I want to make sure almost all panels have at least some kind of detail on them, being either like a vent or just rivets or a wire, but I need something to break up the flatness and make it more interesting for when I do the painting, because dry brushing is going to be my friend for all these details. From this point on, the process is going to get very repetitive with relatively the same steps, just on different parts of the orc. Now being the shoulders and the upper back, which are the same thing with panels and panels with rivets and a couple of vents here and there to make the orc look a little bit more interesting and a little bit less flat, even though I didn't really have a plan for what I was necessarily going to do. I was just thinking, cover this orc in as many panels as possible, and it'll look good in the end eventually. And I had to take the arm off because the weapon was sliding down, because like the other gun, I didn't give it enough wire, so it would just fall off, so I thought it would be better to not have it and then add it back later. With the upper body complete, I can now work on the feet and then move up from there. But I ended up making a mistake when making these feet, so they'll be a surprise to take off at the end. At this point of the build, I'm sure at least a few Warhammer nerds like myself have caught on to which orc warboss I'm building. Let me know, if you know. But anyway, I can start by finishing off the feet and working on the legs, which are, well, pretty straightforward, just as legs are with extra armor. But of course, I have to rivet all the feet first, because they're orcs, and their technology is barely technology, only held together by pure force of will and the collective belief that it will work. With some oversized knee pads in place, that's most of the leg armor, then with some little extra bits of circles on the sides to act as joints. With this being about the 17th time I've mentioned it, I can, well, add more rivets and start working on the chest piece, but not before adding a massive cod piece for obvious reasons. Then I can add some more clay on either side of the chest to build it up and make it look like the arms and the legs, because this is supposed to match, not look out of the ordinary. And then I can add some weird bits of clay on the sides to act as extra detail / metal plates that have been welded on in a hurry or haphazardly, followed by rivets. I know. I am gonna say this about 700 more times by the end of this video. Now, the orc's back was looking a little bit empty, so I'm gonna give him a backpack generator thing. Even though he's not a space marine, but I guess he needs a backpack to power his immense armor, I guess. But it gives me a little bit of extra detail to make, and I like adding extra detail. Now this looks like some sort of bug head, but oh well, I'll suffer in silence. With this Oreo wafer thing, I can put it over the exhaust pipes and make it look less like a bug. Not really, it still kind of looks like a bug, but a little bit more robotic, which I don't really know if that's actually better or not. Then I can blend in a little bit of clay on the edges to make it look like the pipes are hollow instead, even though you can just look straight into it. With the back done, which is relatively simplistic, just rivets and some more rivets, and making the back plate smooth, so that the backpack generator thing has enough space for when I eventually super glue it. Now, I can rivet up this bug head backpack thing, as well as the ammo drums. Even though in the final build, only one ammo drum is actually going to be connected to the gun, because I thought connecting two at the same time looked kind of weird, but I guess aesthetics or whatever. But now that I think about it, I don't think orcs even understand what aesthetics are, but I mean, I digress. I have no idea. Speaking of orcs, I can start making the orc's head and opening up its mouth and carving out a little pig-esque nose. The next detail I can carve into the orc is giving him some eyes with some angry eye sockets, followed by a little bit of clay on top to make the orc look a little bit less scalped, because I thought his head was looking a little bit flat, but now it looks a little bit better. With the angry eyebrows in place, or not eyebrows, but just face muscles, I guess, I can add a little bit of teeth and a little tongue that's not really noticeable on camera, but the teeth and mouth were being really annoying. Then I did the ears in standard orc fashion, and with a little bit of neck muscles, I can put the orc's head in place so the model is looking a little bit better. And just when you thought that this orc had enough detail, the orc actually gets two giant horns attached to the upper shoulders of the armor to really make the armor look extra cool. I don't even know why this orc actually has like tusks on the shoulders, but it's cool. Now I can reattach the power claw to the orc's left hand, and then I can get on to attaching his backpack off camera with a bunch of hot glue to make sure it sticks, and then I can add some wires wrapped in smaller wires to act as power cords and cables to the sword hands and the turret. With two wired wires hot glued in place on either side, I can also add a giant ammo belt to the side with the gun to make it look like this gun actually fires ammo. But now that I think about it, the gun would probably have 4 ammo belts, but I think that just looks silly. The reason I'm making random hand gestures is because when I had to take the feet off the base, they kind of broke. So I had to messily hot glue them back together and to the base, which is, I don't know, annoying, but whatever. Then I can base coat the entire orc except the skin in a gunmetal gray, which also includes the weapons, the backpack, the shoulders, and the exhaust pipes on the top. As if it didn't before, but because I have extra video, I gotta explain it with something. I can't just leave it completely blank. That would be absurd. With everything painted in a decent layer of gunmetal gray, I can mix some extra black into the paint and paint the ammo belt with it, followed by a very black runny wash to go into all the cracks and surfaces to hopefully give it some extra detail and a little bit more depth. This model that I'm making is technically based on Gazkul Mag-Ook Thraka, but his color scheme was a little bit basic, so I wanted to add in some red because red is the fastest color, including when firing guns, I assume. I decided I actually like this color scheme, so I'm going to continue doing the red all around the model to give it a little bit of extra color because I thought it was a little too grayish silver, and I think it is cool because it makes the video longer and it draws the eye towards the video. So hopefully when scrolling through YouTube feed, you'll see the video and you'll click on it from the 100% legendary painting skills. I know, they're absolutely fantastic. But I wanted to break up all the red with a little bit of black, even though I didn't do as much as I originally wanted, but oh well, I'll suffer, I guess. Speaking of adding more colors, I can add some bronzish silver to the bullets and the bullet magazine because I thought it also looked good because I don't know. I just think it looks really cool and makes the model look a little bit more interesting and a little bit less flat, and so I can practice my immaculate dry brushing skills, followed by painting the wires in a dark black, which didn't really work well because it's wire on paint. That, of course, it doesn't work. But this wire did work because it was a wire made out of clay, so the paint actually stuck better. With that done, I can paint the tusk horn things in an off brownish disgusting color before then going over and trying to blend in some lighter tannish colors in and dry brushing it off camera before doing the same thing with a lighter gray, but unfortunately not actually understanding what dry brushing means because I left too much paint on the brush than I originally intended. With 90% of the model complete, I can now start painting the orc in a nice orc green, as if I wasn't gonna do that before. Then I can paint the mouth a pinkish red off camera before then touching up the teeth with a nice bright white, which I will tone down later because for Warhammer 40k this is way too bright. With the shadows and highlights roughly made, I can now put the model in place. But I did the eyes off camera because no one can see my mistakes off camera, only on camera. Like this orc head, which looks a little bit too cartoony, but I don't really know how to do like organic light refraction blending. I don't know, I'm just saying words. But I can glue the orc's head in place and start working on the base by adding this mysterious brown forbidden chocolate peanut butter. With my orc playing in the mud and looking like he's having a lot of fun, the base looks a little empty, so I can give it some rocks that are aluminum foil painted in gray, and then I can give the rocks a black wash off camera and the ground a brown wash because some of the foam lines that I did were sticking through. With that same brown, I can drag it up the feet and make the orc look like he's actually part of the scene instead of just kind of existing. And to make this orc look like he's even more a part of the scene, I can give him some scratches on his face to make it seem like he's battling something, like maybe a space marine from North the Border's Legion. With all the dry brushing done and a little bit of extra dirt or sand on the rocks to make them tie into the scene as well, I can paint the base black to cover up the awful foam gray, and now it's time for the reveal. I would like to apologize. I'm sorry that I cannot get a video out in a week or even 2 weeks. But if you like this video and support the power of the WAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAA branch out instead of doing just Warhammer. But I don't know, I was on a little bit of a binge. Alright, see you next video. Bye.